We're so excited to show you how Figma thinks about AI. Earlier today, we got a glimpse of Figma AI and a bunch of AI features that incorporate efficiency and help you stay in the flow. From wiring up your prototype, to translating an entire design, to filling out real content, we've introduced several new features that address real pain points that impede your flow and your craft. And it all works in the redesigned Figma, serving as a foundation of AI features in our products for years to come. The original founding vision of Figma was to eliminate the gap between imagination and reality. And we believe it's starting to become even more real with Figma AI. So here's a behind-the-scenes look at a few of our new features to give you a peek at how Figma thinks about AI. Over to Dan.
Thanks, Jordan. So we're going to give you the backstory of some of the projects that we've done related to AI. And to get started, we're going to tell you about how we got started with Gen AI. And this is the fun little story about a project that is really meaningful to us, and it's called Jambot. So Jambot is this widget that enables you to interface with LLMs in a different way in a 2D canvas. It started from an AI hackathon. We had a hackathon summertime last year where Figma wanted everybody to think about ideas and what we could do with this technology. And one idea I was really interested in was this notion of a more visual version of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT and Claude, they're all great tools. I use them all the time. The language chat-based interface goes a long way. But they're not the best for every scenario. So if you want to look into multiple ideas, dive into some, jump into another one, drill in, zoom out, the chat interface falls short. Like, you don't want to be scrolling through text. And so that was the idea. Instead of ChatGPT, JamGPT. So what you see here is the real sticky from a pitch session we had. And so people were interested, and specifically there was another engineer, Sam Dixon, who had similar ideas. So I'm a big fan of this tool called Brown Research. She liked Obsidian. I had been playing with this tool called Albo. She had been playing with LangChain. And so we partnered, we set up a team around this, and started working on it. And Sam led the way to build this hacky, jank, but like interesting prototype that proved the concept. You can have these blocks with LLM power functions, and then you can use them in a nonlinear way that is more visual on FigJam. We didn't know whether anybody would get it, whether anybody would like it, but there was at least one person who did. This is Dylan, our CEO. This is a real screenshot from a Zoom call where we were demoing this. And Dylan was all like hearts and flirts, and we're like, huh, maybe there's something here. Maybe we can make something happen. And so I started talking to people behind the scenes. And before we knew it, our product chief, Yuki, chimed our little Slack channel, and he was like, about that, like, what would it take? Like, can you make this real? It's like, you can keep it scrappy, but make it good, whatever that means. But we're like, sure, let's do it. And shortly after, our marketing team and Dylan came back to us as well and said, we have the perfect moment for this, AI revolutions. So what's that? So there was this Andreessen Horowitz conference that was coming up, and Dylan was going to be talking about it, about AI. And it seemed like the perfect moment, all good, but there was one catch. It was coming up in a few weeks. At that point, we were like, that seems rough. We will somehow have to come up with a product story, a design, an implementation, some infra we don't have, and some marketing and brand on top of this in just a few weeks. That seems impossible. But we said, let's do it. It seems worth it. And so this started one of the most memorable work experiences I've had. We had to work across functions at high speed in parallel to get everything to land, even though everything kind of depended on each other. And we had to make a lot of decisions around the functions, the naming, the brand, the actual infra behind it. And one of the things that was really cool was the design process. And so what you see here on the left is our first draft of what this could look like. And it looked like pretty cool. But it was a little bit disconnected from our brand identity, and there was lots of things to figure out. And around that time, we had a new designer who joined Figma, and someone I will name had this brilliant idea. So there's this crazy project they don't know what they're doing. There's a crazy deadline, and it has Dylan's eyes on it, like the eye of Sauron. And new guy, let's give it to you, start a project. Thankfully, Asheng, our designer, was amazing. He jumped into it and started actually coming up with a system and the flows and figured a lot of things. So we're looking good, but at some point, like, we were still pretty short on time, and I was talking with Jenny, our design manager, and I told her, like, by the way, you know we have to log these signs by tomorrow, end of day. And she thought I was joking. Like really? And at Figma, we take our time to build things that we're proud of. This project was a little bit unusual. So I told her, I'm serious, and this is where we are. And so she made a call for help. She called on a bunch of designers to basically go and riff, and everybody jumped in, including our VP of design, Noah. And then came this really cool moment where I was in this file. I was not contributing to it, but I zoomed out, and I saw all these cursors flying around, like creating concepts, like copying each other's ideas, and like riffing on them. And it was so cool. It was beautiful. And then from that came a few like really cool concepts for the visuals that we wanted to figure out. And then Ashen took that in, started building an actual design for it. And then from there, we went to the Eng team, and we have this engineer, Jerry, who's a magician, and I think holds a record to like fastest turnaround from a design to a product, plus some nice touches. And it was all feeling pretty good. We were actually making all the decisions that we needed, including the name. Our PMM, Nicole, figured out, like, after some name stores, actually, we're going to stick with JamGPT. It clicks with people. It makes sense. But then actually, it was you, Jordan, who chimed in on our channel. And said, well, like, I assume you've all seen this. There's this page from OpenAI that says, we forbid use of GPT in your names. And we're like, of course, Jordan. Then went back to talk with our PMM, with legal, and it's like, as I understand it, we probably could have used that name, but we didn't really want to make anybody upset, especially not people who are trying to build super intelligence. And so we just like went back to other concepts. There were some crazy names, and there was one who was kind of similar in spirit. It was like the Jambot, but our brand team didn't quite like it. And on the spot, we suggested, what if it's just one word, lowercase Jambot? And they were like, sure. And so Jambot was born. Immediately, we jumped to the Eng team to rename everything, update the assets, and we were going. So this is what it looked like. This is Jambot. You have a set of blocks and functions to like ref on to the canvas. And despite the crunch, there was some really nice touch on the design. Like there's this iconic notch, there's the colorings, the chain functions, and we feel pretty good about it. And there's something foreshadowing about Jambot that relates to the broader theme of this conversation. If you look at these blocks, these functions, they roughly fall into 3 categories. So ideate is a way to help you get started. And then rewrite, rabbit hole is a way for you to riff and stay on the flow state. And then if you want to code it up or you want to turn it into a poem, that's a way for you to wrap things up or go to the next step. That happens to be the 3 key areas where we think AI can help you as well. But we launched, it was great. Dylan talked about it in the conference. And even though it's scrappy, we still have a lot of work to do to polish it and turn it into something great. The concept resonated with people. And just a couple months ago, Figma won an award as one of the most innovative companies in applied AI because of Jambot. And that was so cool. And I feel pretty proud about the team about it. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you. Sorry for being the copyright police there, but I do love the Jambot name. So there are 3 groupings of ways that we've woven AI really deeply into Figma. And those are getting started, riffing, and wrapping it up. And to get started, we're going to talk about getting started with another one of our first FigJam AI launches, which was generating templates. Back to Dan.
Thank you, Jordan. So I'm going to tell you about another feature called Generate. This is something that we built on FigJam. And so at Figma, one of the ways that we think about the product development process is through these 3 steps: ideate, design, and build. And this ideate portion is pretty key. To get started, many teams do brainstorms and planning sessions and workshops. And FigJam's pretty good for that. It's a whiteboarding tool. You should try it if you haven't. But oftentimes, people are thinking, Like, what should we build? And they're faced with this daunting, empty canvas. And this is a real problem. And so roughly at the same time that we were working on Jambot, we were also thinking about ways to solve this. And we had some solutions, like using templates from the community and first party, but they had limitations. And we also wanted to know, can we use LLMs for that? And part of my thinking process there was literally wait, can we take something that the user wants to do, send it to ChatGPT in a way that it can turn it into some maybe detailed representation of a use case or something visual, and turn it into primitives that were render on FigJam. Nothing seemed impossible there, nothing seemed crazy, but we didn't know what the limitations were. And so I talked with my PM, Albert, who's really excited about this. We partnered, we proposed this to our leads and the broader team, and people liked the idea, but it wasn't clear-cut. Not because of the idea itself, but because of the uncertainty and the fact that we would have to sacrifice other projects on growth and templates. But we got a buy-off to do this 4-week investigation. And so we have since formalized how we do these investigations, and we call them spikes. The idea is to dive into the latest stage of the technology, the latest models, and really understand how far we can go. In this case, we wanted to go, are these more visual, whiteboard-like scenarios in distribution for the models? What does that even mean? What kinds of formats can we use? And in general, can we actually build this? Can we de-risk it in some way? And so we formed a small team. Michael Bollington led the way here on implementing a prototype in just a few days. We had this internal widget where we can type a prompt, get some stickies and sections and content that kind of made sense. And so we got excited. And so the 4 weeks went really fast. We pivoted a few ways. And then at the end of it, we had a bunch of demos that were really cool around generating content, transformation, generating diagrams. And at that point, people were really excited. Not only were we allowed to work on this, but it was this should be your top priority. And not just that, at that time, our execs and our marketing team, they really wanted to go big with AI. And they saw some of what we were doing here. And they saw what our competitors were doing. Everybody was shipping AI features, but no one was doing this generative template-like AI work. And so they said, we gotta go big. And so the plan was, we're going to bundle all the AI features that the teams are working on. That included generating templates and diagrams, as well as summarize and sort. And we're going to have an AI bundle, and we're going to launch it by the end of the year with a big marketing splash. So we said, let's jam. And so this was another really interesting process, not just a few weeks like Jambot, more like a few months, but much more technically, organizationally complex. And we learned a lot. The design process was really cool. Natasha thought about the flows end-to-end from when you first discover a prompt to when you see that animated on the board. But at some point, we were working hard on it, and things were not looking so bright. The prompt engineering progress was highly nonlinear. What we saw in the early investigations wasn't really continuing. And then we faced this combination that was really problematic, which was that output quality, cost, and performance were all kind of bad. And we were already using top-of-the-line model, and they were all at odds with each other. So we felt pretty concerned. We didn't really see a clear path. And there were hallucinations and inconsistencies and all sorts of random issues. We had sticky monsters. This was a real ticket we had in Asana when GPT would decide to come up with just some random stuff that would make the board look crazy. And so we failed kind of doomed for it a little bit, but the team persevered. We got back to the drawing board. We stayed optimistic. And there was a lot of magic. I can't really cover all of that. But everything from rethinking our use cases, re-architecting our prompts, introducing streaming, having clear targets on what we want. Should it be inspirational, utilitarian? There's not a right answer, but we got to pick something. Where do we use AI? Where do we know better? And everything together came to be something that we felt good about. And so it worked. This is Generate. You can start from a set of suggested prompts, focusing on key use cases, or you can type your own. And if so, we help you. You can select activities and sections. And then we generate a board for you. We make it beautiful by default for your brainstorms, for your plans, for your meetings, for your diagrams, your Gantt charts, your flow charts. And then we had the big marketing moment. We had this launch, including all our AI features with Generate, Summarize, and Sort, and it went great. By all measures, this was a big success. And so we celebrated, and Dylan went on TV, and it was really cool. And this quote from Michael actually sums it up pretty well. Like the pipeline from like, hey, Michael, can you work on this? And you investigate this to like, tomorrow Dylan's going to be on Bloomberg, which is pretty insane. But we felt pretty good about what we got. It was hard, but our V1, something that we felt good about. And we're not stopping there. We have since launched mind maps and timelines and prompt galleries. And more broadly, what we're trying to do is to help you think, communicate, and collaborate visually. Like I've seen firsthand and learned from how Figma works internally in a way that is more dynamic and fun. And I just think it's a lot better, and we want to make it a lot easier for many others to do the same. And now, the next step of getting started, Jordan.
Thanks, Sam. So, you saw a glimpse of the Make Designs feature earlier. It's 2024, and we can now generate everything from images to videos to FigJams. But what about generating designs? Well, luckily, we've made quite a bit of progress since these earliest explorations from our ML research team. Yikes. We believe that Figma AI will enable anyone to get to a good first draft. And it's still going to take all of you to get to a world-class product. We actually originally called it First Draft. It set the expectation for what we imagine it to be, to give you inspiration and ideas, and not your final product. When you generate an image, it follows this process called diffusion, where it operates on individual pixels from left to right to give you an image like this that you see for this prompt of a moody bottle of olive oil. And if you've ever used something like Midjourney or Dolly to ask for UI, or if we followed that same method for generating UI, it would give you something like this. And it's just not all that useful. It's just a flat, static image. Leaves are popping out of the phone. I don't know about that. So instead, we design using design systems. The patterns and the examples have already been established. When we compose a design, we pull from the existing pieces to put a UI together. And we end up with something that might look like this, or like this, that uses design system components to achieve consistency and cohesion. So how do you teach AI to design? How does that work? Well, we learned a few things in the process. AI should design by composing design system components, not drawing rectangles from scratch. And you need to teach AI by example with screens that make use of your components so it understands how, where, and when to use them. After we figured out that you shouldn't use diffusion to generate designs, we built a proof of concept design system to get ideas flowing and see how our AI would start performing. We built a ton of generalizable components with mobile patterns built in out of the box. So instead of designing rectangle by rectangle, AI is consuming this design system to output something that might look like this. These were our earliest generations from that design system. But everything kind of looked the same, and it was reusing the same layout for dramatically different types of apps. We built perhaps some of the largest design systems that I've ever seen just for mobile apps and websites, so that anyone getting started doesn't need a design system to generate a design. In the process, we improved our outputs from looking like this, that are drawing rectangles on the canvas, to looking like this, that are demonstrating beautiful usage of components and theming, so no two outputs look the same. Or outputs like this from our website kit. Now, with Make Designs, you can remove any creative blockers to getting started from scratch. You never have to stare at a blank canvas again with Designer's Block. And there's deep design systems integration that give us really high quality outputs that we can take and riff on. And speaking of riffing, design is all about iteration and staying in flow and exploring lots of ideas. Here are some features that we explored to make it easier and faster than ever to riff on designs. And the first is with visual search. You saw in the keynote, I think this is one of my absolute favorite features. There's a few ways that we find things today in Figma. Whether we try to recall the text layers that live inside of a file, we hack a component description, or look to Slack to find where a design might live. We believe that Figma AI will change the way we search and discover. We started by exploring component suggestions and trying to intelligently suggest in the assets panel components that you might need next by predicting what you're working on. And we found that in order to predict the next component, we needed to understand all of the designs across your design system and across your org so that we could connect the dots and create patterns to understand what was visually similar to it. And we realized that we built a really fascinating way to determine the relationship between any two similar designs. And it was through leveraging AI that we could connect the dots across these visually similar designs and create a brand new, amazing way to find things in Figma. In Figma, as of yesterday, you could either really search for files or for assets like components. You have to remember what things are called. But design is really spontaneous, and things get detached, or the file you're looking for doesn't have what you want inside of it. But we believe a design tool should let you actually search for designs. And now you can find all of the designs floating across your team in Figma, and there are two ways to do it. The first is by searching with a visual. How many times have you had a screenshot of something that you couldn't find the source of truth of, and you had to ask maybe on Slack for where it was located? Now, with visual search, all you have to do is drop an image or upload it in Figma AI, and it'll find anything that matches the visual similarity. Once you get a list of results, you get this really rich grid of people who made the things that are visually similar, when they were last edited. You can filter by everything you can imagine, and most importantly, you can insert the real layers right onto the canvas. Oftentimes, you'll actually get inspired by seeing things that you never even knew existed, and that's really important to the process of riffing and exploring lots of ideas. Once you've found what you're looking for, you can insert it onto the canvas, and it's got, again, those vector raw layers, and you can get to riffing and stay in the flow. The second way empowered by AI to search in Figma that's brand new is with natural language. This is one of my favorite examples of what I refer to as invisible AI. It makes existing experiences and surfaces better, and you don't even know that you're using AI. Not only can you search things with a visual, but you can also search using natural language just by describing what's on your mind and find things across your org, and most importantly, not just components or files, but the literal frames that are floating across all of your team. And even useful resources from the community as well, if they don't already exist in your Figma team. So, we really believe that search combined with AI is a match made in heaven. Not only can you find files and assets, but also any design across Figma. It just works by describing things in words. And it helps you stay in the flow by creating an amazing search experience directly where you work, which is inside of your file. And it turns out there are more ways than just search to riff. Back over to Dan.
Thanks. So I'm going to quickly tell you about a feature we launched today. That's the tone dial. One of the things that you can riff on is content and text. And so we've introduced actions and ways for you to manipulate text. But honestly, everyone's doing things like this. There are many products that are introducing text editing and tone adjustments. And so we thought, is there anything more that we could do? Can we adjust the UI as well? And so at Figma, we're really interested in finding novel ways to help you interact and work with LLMs. And so you've seen that through some of our work. And so we were thinking, can we do the same for helping people work with text, helping you like tinker and adjust and fine-tune text? And if so, like what would the dimensions be? And so if we think through the lens of slides, the product we just announced, we can be really opinionated on what that means. We want to help you adjust and fine-tune a message, and there's some clear access that we can use for that. And so this is the tone dial. Let's say that we want to adjust this to be a little bit more casual, more to the point. It's a really interesting experience in my mind. It's simple, but I think in my mind tells the way of how all of this is just the beginning for helping people interact with AI. Like, if we think about it, like, what are the layers? In this case, you might want to, hey, I want to make the text a lot more detailed, maybe just a little bit more professional. But what would that be in other use cases, in other products? Like, what would be the dimensions then? And what if we go beyond text? Like, what would that mean for images, for designs? I think there's a lot to explore here, and I'm really excited to explore this and to explore interfaces to help you riff. For now, I hope you try the tone dial and you like it. And back to you, Jordan, for our next section.
Thank you. The tone dial is so fun to use in the new Slides product. So as you can imagine, as you approach the end of the design process, you start to apply these finishing touches to get things just right. Here's a quick look at how Figma AI helps you wrap things up in your design process, starting with rename layers. So let's ask the proverbial question: should designers name their layers? I hear some chatter. There's this really fun tweet series from a Figmate, Louis, and he asks his followers what they would name a certain piece of UI. And if you see that arrow there that's pointing to what's this called, I'd love you all for you all to take a second to imagine what you might call that thing. Maybe eyebrow, label, stepper, a progress indicator, group 371 copy. Naming is hard, and there has to be a better way. I would love to take a quick poll in the audience. So we've got team unnamed on the left and team named on the right. With a raise of hands, cheer if your team unnamed layers. Okay. All right. That's me as well. And cheer if your team named layers. Wow. I think we have a winner. We believe that Figma AI should do the tedious and mundane for you. And that's why we introduced rename layers. It's literally so cool. First and foremost, naming is hard. When we saw that little tweet piece of UI, it's not obvious what we should name something. And it takes a certain type of designer, clearly all of you are in the audience, to tidy up your layer names by manually, painstakingly renaming every single layer. And we wanted to lean into the memes. There's just something that you can't quite put your finger on that makes the rounds every few months on Twitter about memes related to should designers name their layers. And we wanted to lean into that fun with our community. There was this really great talk last year at Config in 2023 from Jenny, Mejia, and Kian about putting joy on the roadmap. And that's what we believe we've done with rename layers. We've taken something that was tedious and mundane and made it fun with just a click of a button. It works by visually understanding the different parts of your design, connecting the dots between different groupings and their semantic meanings. It understands your layer structure and how you've grouped things to come up with semantically relevant names in seconds that you would have otherwise had to name manually. So no more frame 5346 321 ever again. So, should designers name their layers? We believe that AI should name your layers so you can focus on what's more important, which is your craft. Back to Dan.
So, to wrap up this section of wrapping up, I want to show you something new. So one of the ways that we can help you wrap things up is by taking the next step. So sometimes maybe you have an idea, maybe you have a mock that you want to turn into a prototype, you have some kind of handoff. Or in FigJam, maybe you have a meeting and you want to summarize it, you want to extract themes, you want to sort things into specific pockets. I don't know, but all of those things are already available in FigJam. You should try it, they work great. But what else? What else would be a next step for FigJam? And so we want to show you a new feature, but I want to tell you a mini story, or last mini story today. And so earlier this year, we were trying to figure out our team direction. Things were changing. The Adobe deal was off. And we had various paths we could take. We're not sure. But we wanted to keep the momentum with some of the progress we had on AI. And so we started another spike. This was a more incubation-focused investigation. And we wanted to explore transforming pieces of content like images and docs and helping people take the next step. And we playfully call it Jamify. And there was nothing close to a feature or to a product by any means. But as Config was approaching, we started talking about and thinking about can we enhance the launch of our new slides product? And one of the ideas is, can we reduce the friction to start on a new deck, to get an outline, maybe bring external content in some way? And there was this nice serendipity from a lot of the investigation and learnings that we had in this Jamify spike that meant that the Eng team jumped into this and did something that seemed unreasonable. In just a few weeks ahead of Config, actually go and build something really cool that I want to show you now. So imagine that you're doing some kind of brainstorm. Maybe you're using Jambot to think about cool AI ideas that can change the game. And there's some cool idea about dynamically generating UI based on what a user is doing, and there's some details about it. It looks cool. So maybe think about a pitch for our execs. And so I'm going to select some of the ideas that actually resonated with me. I'm going to click on here, create a Figma slides outline. And so now we're in Figma slides. I'm going to select a template based on what I want it to look like. And behind the scenes, we're turning this into something that is storytelling focused to help you get started. So now you see this nice animation. It's really neat. It feels like the animation is kind of meditative. And if you look at the visuals, they look nice. If you look at the content, it makes sense. And now you've started. You have the outline. You can start on your deck, and you can get going from that. And so we're rolling this out over the next few weeks. You'll learn more about demos and this tomorrow. But yeah, I can't wait for you all to try it out. Back to you, Jordan. Actually, one more thing. So this is, we call it internally board to deck. And in some ways, I think about this as closing the loop. So we talked about getting started, riffing, and wrapping up. And in some ways, the way we can help you get started is by starting on your next use case. And board to deck is an example of this. And I think we'll have more to come. But for now, actually, back to you.
Makes sense. So we took a look at a few ways that we've woven AI into Figma, from helping you get started to making riffing faster and easier, and applying the finishing touches as you wrap things up. That was a behind-the-scenes look at how Figma thinks about AI by showing you really just a handful of the many features coming to Figma AI. And you can see that our original founding vision of starting to eliminate the gap between imagination and reality is starting to become true with Figma AI. Looking ahead to the future, everything you've seen today is only the very start, and it's all in beta. It's so early, but it's so crazy to reflect on the amount of progress we've made in really just the past year. And the reality is this is a multi-year long journey ahead of us, and we want to be sure that we build it together with you, our community, through your feedback and your usage of these new features.
And like AI has become this share layer that, in our opinion, has the potential to dramatically change all our products, the way we do work, the way we help you do work. But it requires a different mindset, a different way of working that in some ways defies common wisdom. And we've learned a lot for the past couple of years. I want to share just a couple of insights. One of them is that you really have to be on top of the technology, on top of the capabilities. As you've seen, we've gotten a lot of value from the spikes, a lot of serendipity from the prototypes, and actually being able to build something that we didn't think was possible before. And there's the saying around people with hammers looking for nails, and there's a lot of that happening with AI right now, but there's also something different. I think the hammer itself is changing quite rapidly, perhaps exponentially. And so that changes the game, and we have to remain grounded on user value, but remain open-minded to where the technology is going and what it unlocks, like the user value that you didn't know you could provide. And related to this, we also have to be living in the future in some ways and walking backwards from that. Like, what can you anticipate? There's a lot of uncertainty, but what do you know? Like, when there's a launch of GPT-5 or Claude 4, like what are they going to be really good at? And what does that mean for your products? Are you going to get better? Are you part of this improvement loop? Or are they going to get obviated and obsolete? And there's a lot of things like this, like how do you think about costs? How do you think about opportunities that are not available just yet, but are quickly becoming available? And this game is different. This game is exciting. There's this on-demand intelligence that is rapidly growing. And yeah, I think many people ask, understandably, like, is this going to replace job X, job Y? And mid to long term, the only honest answer is no one knows. There's people who think that this is our doom, there's no escape. There's other people who think that any concern is premature or hysterical. They're probably both wrong, we don't know. I'm personally optimistic. And not just that, I think right now, we do know that we can remove barriers and empower a lot more people and supercharge creative, talented professionals to new heights, things that they couldn't do before. And that's really exciting. And we also, in my opinion, more importantly, have the ability to shape this. We're integrating AI into this complex web system of humans. And I think the way we use it, the way we build with it, the way we build for it, is going to significantly change the direction this all goes. And personally, I think there's nothing more interesting, more exciting, and more important than to get to shape the direction that takes into something possible and wonderful. And I hope you are too. So thank you.
Thank you.